Okay, people, one reason I've been using the internet to go over all these laws I've been talking to you about, your constitutional rights and how they're consistently denied in a court of law. And I even explained to you, the only rights you have are the ones you know and take to court with you. I even explained to this one guy going over the rules of professional conduct and a code of judicial conduct is necessary. Print out copies, take them with you. I showed them how I put them in pamphlet forms. I went to the library, had them printed out double-sided, and then went to one of those stationery places and had it put in a binder. I says, because you go to court and use those laws, everybody's going to play stupid. They're going to act like they don't know what you're talking about. So you're going to have to quote the rules and the codes word for word, to the letter. Well, anyways, when I tried that, I made the mistake of telling my attorney before I went out to court, tell the judge I was in holding in the back. I was convicted because nobody cared about the rules, the codes, my constitutional rights, my right to be heard, violating the rule of law, the letter of the law. Just a consistent base of bombardment of constitutional violations. But the only one in the court that heard me were the judges and the lawyers, because they were the only ones that knew what I was talking about. And so anyways, the lawyer went and told the judge that I told him that reporting misconduct is mandatory in both the rules and the codes. And I was going to bring that up to the judge, so he ran out and told the judge, and then instead of bringing me out to court, they escorted me back to Cook County Jail, had me walk the Green Mile, and left me for dead. But this is just part of it. Now, I got diagnosed with PTSD back in '96. I've been in therapy. I was in therapy till they kicked me to the curb because they wanted me to forget this happened to me. And just settle with a bunch of pills. They said they would make me forget. It never made me forget. And they were giving me medications. They got mad because they said it was for seizure disorder. I said, but it did nothing to stop the migraines, the vomiting, the massive headaches, And, but eventually, I got cut off from the medications, and they told me you could get them other places for free. And one of the therapists told me that I needed to see a neurologist, and I didn't have the insurance at that place. I went there, so they had me sign up for this insurance, which canceled out my other insurance, to see the neurologist, and the neurologist just gave me a prescription. So I went back to see my therapist. She said, we don't take that insurance, so you can't come here anymore. And that was the end of my therapy for PTSD. And she was upset because I wouldn't forget about this. And I reminded her what the doctors said at Cook County Hospital when they sent me from Cermak Hospital to Cook County Hospital. They told the sheriffs if they reported what happened, if they treated me, they would have to report what they treated me for and who did it, and heads would roll because the county sheriffs did it to me. So they took me back to Cook County Jail, and boy, when they had me in that ambulance, I was pretty much out of it. But when those sirens hit, I thought I was going for my last ride. And next thing you know, I woke up in a hole in Cook County Jail. But anyways, I talked to my therapist about going with me to the state's attorney's office and giving them my exculpatory evidence so they can exonerate me, and that would help me, with this PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. It would help me, by exonerating me, for a crime that never happened, that I didn't commit, that didn't happen. And she said, no, you got to forget about that, And I tried with lawyers. I went to the state's attorney's office. They chased me out. We don't work for you. Had some sheriffs chase me out. You know, can't bring it up in court. Well, I tried and I got left for dead. So, the right to be heard is void in every court of law, especially when you bring up the rules and the codes and how consistently they were violated throughout your case. People, you got to stop and realize if you go through the rules and the codes, that's how your case was supposed to start, and it didn't. So that's deprivation of rights from the very beginning, and that's what I wanted to state. I wanted to state through the Code of Judicial Conduct, it's not just a constitutional right, the right to be heard, but it's in the Code of Judicial Conduct, Canon 2.6, I think, Rule 2.6, but you have the right to be heard. Everybody has the right to be heard. That cannot be denied. And then I wanted the judge to report the misconduct, because reporting misconduct is mandatory in the rules of professional conduct and the Code of Judicial Conduct. So she was supposed to report the lawyer, and I wanted her to do that, so that's what I was going to say. And, then the judge would have to report my lawyer, the state's attorney for violating rules of professional conduct. They would have had to report her for violating the Code of Judicial Conduct. They would have had to report each other for violating the Code of Judicial Conduct. Everybody would have had to report each other for violating the rules and the codes. Reporting misconduct is mandatory in both. Nobody reported misconduct, which is misconduct, which creates a conspiracy against rights under the color of law. And I filed with the ARDC, the Judicial Inquiry Board, a writ certiorari to the state Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court. Writ of habeas corpus. It's a motion to quash now, but I used other motions before. I've done everything, been everywhere. Been to these wrongful conviction centers and chased away from Northwest University wrongful conviction center, because I told them, hey, let's just, I had all this exculpatory evidence I took with me, and when they finally talked to me, I says, I can prove my case. I said, just put it in a little short note, letter, a couple paragraphs explaining, we'll see what we can do. I said, no, listen. And I pulled out the rules of professional conduct. It says right here, Rule 3.8, special responsibility for the prosecutors. Go down to the end. And H&I, it says that, if the prosecutor becomes aware of exculpatory evidence, it's their job to exonerate that person. So we just go down there with their exculpatory evidence and have them do their job. And they yelled at me, that's not the way we do things. And, they called security. Some other people started asking me what I was talking about. And I started explaining to them the rules and the codes. And lucky for some of them, I was carrying multiple copies of both. And I handed them out, and security came. And I had to take off out of it. But anyways, I filed with I wrote to the FBI, the DOJ. Nothing happened. Nobody ever answered me until I went there personally to the FBI with the rules, the codes, a written statement on conspiracy against rights under the cover of law based on judicial misconduct, ineffective assistance of counsel, and prosecutorial misconduct. And I started citing the violations. And they took my complaint. And I said, but wait, there's more. What about the exculpatory evidence? You have evidence as well? And I said, yeah, because all I needed was the law. Nobody abided by it. My constitutional rights were denied from the very beginning. And that started with my lawyer being ineffective assistance of counsel. Violating the rules of professional conduct is ineffective assistance of counsel. Violating the rules of professional conduct is not a mistake. It's intentional, wantingly, and willingly. Every lawyer and judge knows the rules and the codes, and they're supposed to be watching each other to make sure everybody abides by the rules and the codes. Nobody does. Nobody reports that misconduct, giving you that conspiracy against rights under the color of law. So I tried with my therapist. I tried talking with one of the psychiatrists, and I can't get nobody, and so I'm going to have to start making some public pleas. I did a video asking if anybody would like to take my exculpatory evidence to the state's attorney's office. All you got to do is look up the rules of professional conduct, Rule 3.8, special responsibilities of the prosecutor, and you'll see it's their job to exonerate me. Okay, so that's what really helped with the PTSD. The nightmares of dying, having my face, my head crushed, my head was swollen. My groin was swollen. You'd have to watch the whole video. I'm not going to play it for you. I dream about this nightly. I have medical issues that haven't been taken care of. Doctors telling me I don't need to walk. My ankles are really messed up. They could fix them, but they were mad because I did the MRIs first, and I didn't do the X-rays, the shots, the therapies, all that stuff before they did the MRIs. But the MRIs proved they could fix what was wrong, and I said, let's just do that. And they said, no, we do all this other stuff first, which I found the radiation poisoning unnecessary because X-rays show bone damage, not joint damage, and any doctor could tell you that. And the shots are useless. They do more damage than good. It was proven before I got my first operation, my shoulder. I got 6 so far. Both shoulders, both knees, and both wrists fixed. And that took a whole lot of time. And the doctor who finally sent me, after he did the MRI, he sent me immediately for an MRI with contrast dye because it was really bad. They had to see how bad it was, and as soon as they did that, that doctor, which was supposed to be an orthopedic specialist, I was there to get my shoulders fixed. Turns out he says he wasn't the right kind of doctor, so he sent me he gave me a referral to the doctor to fix his shoulder. And they tried to send me off with just that one. I said, what about my other shoulder? And it was an argument there, but they fixed that. What about my knees, my ankles, my wrists, What about the rest of me? And they told me to find another doctor. And it wasn't until 10 years later I was able to get my knees fixed after getting the red, white, and blue card, and that was a big fight just to get that. Social Security didn't want to recognize all these other things that were going on, and when I brought these facts up, then I got my back pay and my red, white, blue card, but that took 10 years. So complaining about that while I was in therapy, for this PTSD didn't do any good. Because for some reason they thought that I was the crazy one. Here I am fighting in the courts, against lawyers and judges on my own without a lawyer. And I know that's not common, but I was forced to. When lawyers and judges refuse to abide by the rules of professional conduct, you have no choice. I had no choice. You have no choice. You got to take the rules and the codes with you to make sure they play by the book, word for word, to the letter. Because if you don't, none of that will ever happen, and you'll always be living under the color of law. That's deprivation of rights under the color of law, considering the fact that everybody's doing it, all this misconduct, and nobody's reporting it, which is mandatory. It gives you a conspiracy against rights under the color of law. So anyways, this is PTSD in me, and thank you for listening, because sharing what I know with people that I don't know, is one of the greater joys in life given to me. I learned that through reading this book, about this guy named Jesus. That was before I knew about what religion was. It was just a book, and the gift of giving is a great joy, and especially when it helps out other people. So that's what I'm doing. The Bible says, teach a man to fish, feed him for a day. Teach him to fish, you feed him for life. So I'm teaching people to fish. That's what I'm doing. And that's the only thing that's getting me through this, talking to all of you. So I want to thank all of you, Your questions are bountiful and quite fulfilling. I tell many people, no question is a stupid question. The only stupid questions are the ones you don't ask. Okay, so no stupid questions. Okay, I don't mind the questions. And I don't think I need to explain that I don't accept or take money, because this is not what I'm about. Some of my videos, I explain the Constitution is the content of my character, which makes we the people the content of my heart, the many pieces of my heart. I am pro-Constitution, pro-rule of law. In a nation of laws, I always put the Constitution first. Any law repugnant to the Constitution is void. So said Thurgood Marshall some years back. Nobody's arguing that. Law is a power unto itself, and when ignored in a court of law, what is the sense of having a court of law? When you have lawyers and judges that refuse to abide by and live up to the oath and enforce the rules of professional conduct and the code of judicial conduct, where it's most important in a court of law. They can't even give the appearance of impropriety. But that's what you're all going through, and that's what hurts me the most, As many times, which is a daily basis, sometimes multiple, because I have to live with pain on a constant daily basis, and I avoid the pain medications and all the pharmaceuticals, because that left me unable to relieve myself. It had me so clogged up, I thought I was going to die of a heart attack, a brain aneurysm, a bleed. Well, that's what the doctors were saying. And the last time I was in the hospital, that was just suffering from the migraines. Well, imagine not being able to take a shit. That used to scare the crap out of me, and then right back in. And but since I got cut off, I lost my insurance, my employment, my insurance, everything, and then I lost the medications eventually, and no doctors, and that nearly killed me. Withdrawal. The physical effects, I think, were easier to handle than the mental effects, because I've been with these medications for so long and believed that they were helping. But it wasn't until I got off of them when I found out, for the most part, they weren't. They were giving me medications for depression. Well, the only reason I was depressed is because of this living under the color of law. They literally made me look like a criminal in a court of law by withholding exculpatory evidence to prove my innocence, and that's on everybody's behalf. The attorney's working on my side, the opposing party, and the judge. And then I won in civil court. It's easier to win in civil court once the case is decided in criminal court. And that's the basis they went on. Well, you lost in criminal court. I had to go pro se in civil court, and it came down to where they weren't allowing any evidence or witnesses, just like they did in criminal court. That's how I lost in criminal court, withholding evidence and not allowing witnesses. So they were just going to go by my word against the opposing party, my ex-fiance. So just as the court was about to start, I pulled out the Code of Judicial Conduct. In accordance with the Code of Judicial Conduct, Canon 2, 26 or something like that. The right to be heard. The judge called for a sidebar. Everybody Everybody went into the judge's chambers. They didn't allow me, and a couple hours later called me in and gave me a voluntary non-suit. If they didn't refile within 1 year, it was over and done with. And that was just to keep me for citing the judge for violating the oath, for violating the code of judicial conduct, for allowing these lawyers to violate the rules of professional conduct. All these people perpetrated a fraud upon a tribunal, and the judge was the tribunal. I mean, the judge was a contempt of his court every time. For every day he allowed it to go through his court, and this took years. And all it took was to expel this case was for me to bring the rules and the codes with me to see to it that everybody plays by the book, word for word, to the letter. But I already had been in prison, already faced a death sentence, and still suffering from the pain of that to this day now. I still suffer from migraines. I was in the hospital last time 3 times consecutively within a week. The first 2 times they just kept me there for observation in ICU, and first time I was angry. What are you doing? I need some help. I need to look. And they said, we just have you here under observation for now, and I couldn't breathe, and they gave me a breathing tube, I think, and I kind of was blacking out. The migraines are so bad, but eventually I told my son, just take me home. And then it happened again. So I wound up in an ambulance again. They took me to another hospital. They had me under observation. And said, look, like I was feeling better. Sent me home with a host of medications. And the third time I wound up in the hospital, they called the family in to say their goodbyes. Again, under observation. No testing, no trying to help. The doctors talk about that I could be suffering from an aneurysm, maybe a tumor, or some kind of brain bleed, something. They won't know unless they do a CT scan, an MRI, and they had to do all this different. I couldn't hear everything, but they did nothing. And they gave me some strong medication. It stopped the migraines. I said, you can go now, sent me home. And I went through that 2, maybe 3 times again. But I just stayed home. Figure if I'm going to die, at least it's going to be in my bed, in my chair, you know. And what cures the migraines was sitting in front of the air conditioner, sucking in that deep cold air and helping my head cool off. And, you know, that was a lot easier to deal with doctors and nurses coming and taking a look, waiting to see when I took my last breath, when I closed my eyes for the last time, so they could come and tell the family, collect my remains without doing a damn thing. Simply because why this happened to me, where and when. You know, if somebody fixes me, they're going to have to report what they fixed and why and who did it. And, well, you know, the United States Constitution prohibits cruel and unusual punishment. And the only reason they did this was to deter me for declaring my constitutional rights in a court of law, which I know quite well. So to keep from getting it on the record, to keep me from citing this conspiracy against rights under the court of law, led to, it's supposed to say leads to a conspiracy to commit murder. You know, I had no constitutional rights in that court from the very beginning, and I don't have any now. Even when I take them into a court of law with me, no matter who I reported to, from the lowest court to the highest court, the U.S. Supreme Court, I've been ignored. It's not my fault, people. Ever since I found the rules and the codes back in 1979, I've been doing my best to get these people in the courts to live up to the oath they took. It's impossible for me to do it on my own. So you're the ones I need. I'm not looking for followers. Yes, I like having these followers, but I'm looking for leaders, people to lead the future, young people as our future politicians, lawyers, and judges, and people knowingly and willingly living up to the oath without mental reservation. You know what the penalties are for violating the oath? You know that's deprivation of rights. You know what the penalties are for deprivation of rights? Nobody getting charged as a conspiracy against rights under the color of law. You know what the penalties are for conspiracy against rights under the color of law? That's violating the rule of law. You know what the penalties are for violating the rule of law? So, yeah, I gave up on seeking mental health services. The last couple of places I went to, when I gave them a copy of this hospital report, they decided they didn't want to talk to me anymore. Because in a legal or not just in the legal profession as well as the medical profession, you know, they're required to report any misconduct. My not being treated, you know, for this massive head injury I received, and the pain I have to live with. This was in '89, people. This is 2026. But what helps me with this PTSD is knowing that some of you, I wish all of you, were using all these laws I post about for educational purposes. Yes, it's up to you whether you want to use them or not. That's totally up to you. I can't force you to do it. I can only let you know what you can do. And start holding them to the oath they took. And take the rules and the codes with you. And start clawing your way to earning your rights, your constitutional rights. Your constitutional rights are earned. They are not a given. In a nation of laws, this is just the way it is. That's the way it is in a court of law. The only thing that works is bringing the law with you. You don't have a chance. You don't have a chance on you unless you have the ability to give informed consent. Informed consent requires reasonable knowledge to make an informed decision, to give informed consent before proceedings can proceed, before anything in a court of law can proceed. And you don't have that ability until you have the legal knowledge, which would be the reasonable knowledge to make an informed decision, to give informed consent. That would be proper disclosure, full disclosure. That's what I want for you. That's what I want for you. Full disclosure. Look up disclosure law. And then you'll understand why I went over so many different things with you. I don't want to happen to you what happened to me. That's the only thing that's making me want to push for another day. There's so many times I've been in so much pain. I couldn't get out of bed, didn't want to get out of bed, knew I'd have to struggle just to get to the bathroom. But knowing you have questions that need to be answered is what gives me motivation. You inspire me. When it comes to we the people, you inspire me. I don't want you to miss out like I missed out. Go over my videos. You know, I don't monetize any of my videos, so I've been advised to on several different platforms. But I just want to make sure this gets out to people that can't afford it. You know, like you can't afford a lawyer. You can't afford that bullshit they're putting you through in a court of law. Due process doesn't exist because you didn't get a fair trial, because you never had effective assistance of counsel. If nobody's playing by the rules or the codes, effective assistance of counsel doesn't exist in any court of law. If they're not playing by the rules or the codes, they're not working for you, they're working for themselves, which is forbidden in the oath of public service. In the preamble, the rule of professional conduct, it clearly states that all lawyers are to work in the public interest and not further the self-interest of the bar or parochial interests. And here we are. All right, thank you for listening. This helps me out with my PTSD. This is what helps me look forward to another day. Helping you help yourself. All right. Once you learn what you learn, nobody can take that away from you. Nobody can take that away from you. And once you read what you read, it's going to be hard for you to forget. It happened to me. I'm nobody special. I read the rules and the codes when I was 17 years old and been preaching about it since. I believe if you could know and will know as much and even more than I do, if you put your mind to it. Read to succeed, people. Read to succeed. You know, be who you are, who I know you are. We the people. The rightful rulers of the United States of America, who I pledge allegiance to whom they took the oath to, we the people. Thank you and good night. I wish you, thank you and good night. May your Creator always be with you and rain many blessings. I wish you a long life and good health. Thank you for listening, and thank you for helping me through my mental health issues. Talking to you, sharing what I know. I've talked to some of you over the phone, or some of you in comments. And knowing if I could keep happening to me from happening to you, I know I'll serve my purpose. And somebody wanted to thank me, kind of religious person. So if you want to thank me, look to your Creator and thank Him. Let the glory go where it belongs. He that created me put me on this path. Gave me the strength to continue. Help me survive this day. The day I wanted to die. The day I begged for death. I was in so much pain I couldn't take it. Thought I was taking my last breath. For some reason it didn't happen. The pain was immeasurable. So I begged the Almighty, if He helped me through this, help me find another day, I will find another way to reach you. Find your way out of the valley of death. In a court of law, where life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness goes to die. Thank you and good night.